Good morning, Canada. Welcome back to another episode of Country. Today's December 12th, 2024, and we don't have much time left. There is unos, dos, tres, maybe cuatros question period episodes left before these politicians take off for the Christmas holidays. So, as we are approaching the end of the season, I do want to encourage you guys to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel because it does really help with its growth. And we got a lot of stuff to take a look at before we take a look at what's going on in the house. A lot of news, a lot of stuff is going on, man. Holy smokes. You got tensions between America and Canada in a way that I have never seen before and in a way that I do not consent. All right, you got tariffs that were threatened by President-elect Donald Trump, 25%. We're going to tax the 51st state. And now you have not federal politicians. You have provincial. You have the premier of Ontario saying, okay, well, you may want to do that, but we're going to cut off the power on a lot of your key states and major cities because we supply a lot of that power, which is bananas to even say. Like, hey, America, you want to fight? Okay, let's fight. I don't think I want that. Like, nobody wants that. But at the same time, I'm torn. I'm torn between a rock and a hard place because I don't necessarily want America to just walk all over us, right? I don't want America to be like, hey, we're just going to tax you and do whatever we want and we can make fun of your politicians however we want. I don't like Justin Trudeau, but I do like Canada. And so I'm kind of torn because a lot of the stuff that Trump is saying about Trudeau, it's absolutely funny. But at the same time, if he was saying that about Pierre Poilievre, who would be prime minister, I don't know if I would have the same reaction. Like, haha, that's funny. Or, hey, buddy, frig off. So I'm a little bit torn because even though I didn't vote for Trudeau, I don't like Trudeau, I don't support Trudeau, I don't agree with pretty much all of his policies. I still don't like other countries making fun of Canada like this with a tax incentive or a tax 25% tax or tariffs hanging over our heads. If it's in the media like Sky News, Indian media making fun of Canada and criticizing them, that's fine, but they're not threatening us with 25% taxes, right? Tariffs. And so that's where I'm kind of like, hey, this isn't good. But I don't know if I agree with Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario's threat to cut off power in America. So again, I'm torn. I haven't made my mind up yet. I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments about this. And if you're not even familiar, well, just hold your horses. Hold your horses, bud, because we're going to get into that in a few moments. We got a lot of news to take a look at before we get into what is going on in question period. So buckle up. Make sure you hit the like button on this stream. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. I think we're sitting at 125,000 subscribers, which is pretty awesome. Let me just double check right now. It'd be pretty cool if we got to 126,000. Yeah, we're at 125,500 subs right now on the channel. It'd be pretty sweet. Pretty sweet if we got to 126,000 on the stream. So just keep that in mind. It's free to do. It's tax deductible. Helps fight climate change for all I care. Yada, 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 yada. Anyways, let's get right into the news, shall we? Starting things off with a little bit of breaking news. Former NDP leader Rachel Notley resigns, Felicia, her Edmonton seat. That's an opportunity for Nenshi to finally get a seat, but it appears he won't take it. What's he so afraid of? That is wild. Oh my goodness. People are jumping ship. They realize that it's a lost hope. No one is going to be voting for them. Jagmeet posted this before I even got news that Rachel Notley resigned. So I didn't really understand it. Maybe because I just woken up. Right, I just opened my eyes and I read, what the heck is he talking about? Jagmeet Singh saying she fought for people and made her province a better place. They said it was impossible until she proved them wrong. Rachel Notley showed us how New Democrats can defeat conservatives. Jagmeet, she lost, but okay. It has been an honor to work with her. She has made Albertans proud. She has made New Democrats proud. Thank you, Rachel. So I read that first, and then I read the news that Rachel Notley resigned. So yeah, it's kind of crazy, but hey, doesn't really matter the order. We all ate it, right? It's like eating an appetizer after you have the main course. It's all going down the same garbage chute anyways. Then you have this post right here. Hold on a second. Rachel Notley is the oldest leader of the NDP in Alberta. She destroyed Alberta and destroyed the industry, and now she's jumping ship. So that's the full story right there. She can't handle the pressure. She can't fathom the damage that she's done, and that's it. She's out. She's kaputs, right? Which seems to be on par with Liberals and NDP. So there you go. Now let's take a look here at a crazy back and forth between Jamil Jivani and this Trudeau DEI minister here. Wow, you're going to get a good laugh out of this one.
Chair, clearly the member, I've known this now for a long time, and it was very clear in our last interaction, the member does not understand what diversity, inclusion, and equity actually means.
Thank you for articulating that. Maybe I can ask you some questions and learn something today about diversity and inclusion. I've got a statement here from a witness who appeared before the Justice Committee, Rachel Cook from the University of Alberta, who said, and I quote, "I think the EDI system has made the problem of anti-Semitism worse. I think it can start at the top, but it also starts in institutions and in massively funding EDI programming, such that quite literally when I ask who decides who is in these EDI meetings, is it a percentage of the population? Their response was, it's in the groups that deserve equity and deserve inclusion." So, Minister, I'd like to ask, who deserves equity and who deserves inclusion in your mind?
Mr. Chair, my goal as a Minister for Diversity, Inclusion, and Persons with Disabilities is to ensure that we're creating equal opportunities for every single person in this country, regardless of their age, regardless of their race, regardless of their identities, regardless of their abilities, and that takes fundamental changes within our institution to do that work. You have to be deliberate about making that change. Clearly something the Conservative Party does not understand.
So
they can think back to, Mr. Speaker, they can think back to their snitch lines. We all remember the time under the Harper government. They have absolutely no idea what diversity inclusion means.
Wow, there you go. There's no room for discourse with these people, right? They keep talking in their little Karen voice, and they keep going and, excuse me, I'm talking, right? It's insane. These people are nuts. You're trying to go toe-to-toe with Jamil Jivani? Man, that's not going to work. Pierre handpicked that person, all right? He's also friends with Vice President-elect J.D. Vance. They go way back as broskies, all right? Probably did upside-down keg stands, okay? Back in fraternity days. You're not going to beat the Conservatives. There's a massive wave happening in America, right? Super pro-Republican. And the same thing is happening here in Canada. Super pro-conservative. You're not, the debating points that the Liberals have, they can't even stand on them. They're horrible. They're shite. The Conservatives are well prepared all around. And this is awesome because you're seeing more and more people kind of come out of the shadows and make a name for themselves on the Conservative side, right? It used to be just Pierre, Melissa Lanceman, Jasraj Singh, and now you're seeing Jamil Jivani, even Cooper, Michael Barrett. These people are starting to, have some really good zingers and really good talking points, and it's awesome to see that. What's not so awesome to see, though, on the other hand, is real estate in Canada. So this chart right here makes me not cry, but maybe on the inside. The worst home affordability in the US and Canada is in Vancouver and in Toronto. So Vancouver takes the worst home affordability in America and Canada by like a pretty big long shot. And then Toronto is second with LA very close behind Toronto. That's bad. Canada, literally top two worst places to be able to afford a home. Isn't that something? So when we look at the breakdown here, let me make it bigger here. Hope you can all see it. So price to income ratio in Vancouver is 12.7. 12.7. That's freaking mental. 12.7 times your annual income is the average house price. The average house price is $842,000, which isn't even the highest. It's very high, but it's not the highest on this list. But the average income per household is $66,000 in Vancouver. That doesn't add up. That's crazy. And then, but to be honest, I'm at least happier to see, this is like a sadistic thing maybe to say, but I'm happier to see that that's in Vancouver instead of Toronto, because I've lived in both. I lived in Toronto in like a home when I was younger, but then I also lived in Vancouver while living in my van, not paying rent, but living by the ocean, which I don't even know if you could do anymore because they've changed a lot of the laws, but I did it when it was the glory days, right? And I mean, like I'm from Ontario, right? Born and raised, love it, but not as much as I love the West Coast. And at least with Vancouver, you don't have a grungy lake. You have the ocean. So it makes sense. It makes sense that Vancouver is at the top of the list. I'm at least happy to see that Vancouver's at the top of the list instead of Toronto, if I'm being totally honest. It's like a weird sadistic thing, but hey, Toronto, you're looking at just buildings and like a lake. That's it. That's gross. Anyways, Toronto with the price to income ratio, 10.7, and then LA following right behind with 10, which is crazy. So Canada takes the cake for one of the worst places in the world to live based off of affordability. And then we're taking a look here at Elon Musk calling Justin Trudeau an insufferable tool in new social media posts. And that's a headline. That's a massive headline. In fact, that's one of the better headlines CTV has had in a long time, with over 108,000 views on that singular post on X. So you have here was said it was sharing a video of Justin Trudeau talking about how in the United States voted for a second time to not elect its first woman president. I want you to know that I am and always will be a proud feminist. That's what Justin Trudeau said. Like, who cares, man? People are done with the gender baiting and the race baiting. People are done with that crap. So it's a moo point, as Joey Tribbiani says. I know it's moot, but it's a moo point. It's a cow's opinion. It doesn't matter. Okay. And then that's when Elon Musk said in reply to the post, he's such an insufferable tool, won't be in power for much longer. And we all see it, to be frank. We all see it. I mean, when you look at any of the polls, you're seeing just a landslide sweep against Justin Trudeau. You have these polls right here. Pierre Poilievre projected 227 seats, woo-wee, with a bottom line of 201 and a top end of 249. Justin Trudeau at 47 seats. He was at 63 the other day. I don't know what happened. Maybe his friendship bracelets kind of backfired. Who knows? And more importantly, who cares? 99% likely across the board for the Conservatives of winning the most seats and odds of a majority government. So that's looking very good for everyone except Justin Trudeau, which, to be honest, is probably how we all want it anyways. And then we're going to take a look here at this little Scrum interview before everyone went into question period. This is yesterday, for those that miss it. I haven't even seen this, to be honest. So you got Trudeau and a bunch of MPs were questioned right in the hallway of Parliament on First Minister's meeting on tariff threat, Canada Post strike, and just the overall state of everything.
The premiers. Looking forward to talking about Team Canada with the premiers tonight. There's lots of work to do altogether, but we can see that one of the great strengths of Canada is different perspectives focused on standing up for Canadians. That's what this is all about. C'est une opportunité importante de parler avec les premiers ministres sur notre approche équipe Canada. Le fait que les premiers ministres sont différents pour défendre les intérêts.
Struggling without Canada Post.
Canadians are fed up with this dispute. They do not believe that the parties have taken these negotiations seriously. I hear that from small business owners, from rural and remote communities, indeed, Indigenous stakeholders. So it's time for these parties to reflect the great responsibility that they have, get on with these negotiations, get a deal, and return the postal service to Canadians.
À partir de
français?
À partir du moment.
Non, s'il vous plaît.
Intervenir.
Pas en français.
Conclure une entente au ma responsabilité. Jour nouveau. Every day is a new day.
Oui.
Every day is a new day. And For today, I'm telling these parties to take very seriously the work that they have before them and to get a deal done.
Sinon, qu'est-ce qui se passe?
Il n'y a pas de sinon, il n'y a pas de question.
There should be a sinon, right? Which means if not. If not, if the postal strikes don't end, then what's going to happen? Well, this has been an absolute shit show. If you're thinking that there's going to be a deal agreed upon before the holidays, before like Christmas arrives, you are just, I'm sorry, but you're living in like flu land. It's not going to happen. Canada Post will not come to an agreement before Christmas. It might be on Christmas Day. It might be right after Christmas. But tensions are extremely high right now between government, union, and Canada Post employees that are on strike because they're all trying to make it happen before Christmas. But there's such a backlog of shipments, of goods that need to be delivered that even if they were to find a deal today or yesterday, everything is still going to be extremely delayed. So, I mean, I don't want to say don't use Canada Post, but if you're looking to send a package to somebody right now before the holidays or right after the holidays, Canada Post is not going to be the best suited, option for you. And in fact, anyone who's ordered stickers, I've shown them before, they're just out of reach right now, but I still have like all the sticker orders from everybody that's ordered stickers in the merch websites. I'll get them right now. They're all right here, right? They're all right here, and I have more and more piles of them. I can't send them anywhere. I can't, because even with other courier services, they are so backlogged that they're not accepting new shipments. And I can't send with Amazon because it's right here in my hands. That's not how Amazon works. So unfortunately, if you would like to purchase a sticker pack, feel free to do so. Link down below in the description and use code SUNSHINE on any of the, I think, 2 or maybe 3 sticker packs. You'll get yourself 15% off. But it won't be shipped out to you until after the strike. So I do very much apologize for that. Now moving on to Danielle Smith and what she recently had to say about the tariffs and the border measures.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. It's great to be here with the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services, Mike Ellis, Chief Bob Andrews from the Alberta Sheriffs, and Angela Kemp from the Alberta Law Enforcement Response Team, or ALERT, to discuss security at the Canada-US border. Today, Alberta's government is taking immediate action to crack down on illegal activities at our shared Alberta-US border, namely illegal migrants and the trafficking of drugs and guns. This suite of measures will curb illegal border activities and strengthen our nation's border security. We're investing $29 million to create a new unit, the Interdiction Patrol Team, or IPT, under the command of the Alberta Sheriffs. This unit will be supported by over 50 specially trained sheriffs. 4 drug patrol dogs, critical to ensure reasonable suspicion to search vehicles. 10 cold weather surveillance drones that can operate in high winds with dedicated pilots. And 4 narcotics analyzers to test for illicit drugs. The IPT will be made up of 7 teams of sheriffs. We will also create a 2-kilometer deep border zone, which is a red zone deemed critical infrastructure to enable the sheriffs to arrest individuals found attempting to cross the border illegally or attempting to traffic illegal drugs or weapons without needing a warrant. The criminals behind these activities destroy lives on both sides of the border, and these measures are our way of stopping it. It doesn't mean that Alberta intends or wants to act alone when it comes to securing the border. We'll obviously keep working closely with our federal counterparts at the Canada Border Services Agency, as well as the RCMP. We will start filling the ranks of the border teams as soon as possible. Our goal is to have the Interdiction Patrol Unit up and running by early next year. Together with federal law enforcement, we'll ensure that our section of the American border is well protected. We'll deny safe haven to criminals looking to operate in both countries. And if we succeed and maintain proper border security, I expect we will have a very strong relationship with the United States, as we always have.
Yeah. I mean, something needs to happen. I think that the relations with Canada and America are extremely, extremely fragile right now. And it doesn't help that Danielle Smith, so I know she's not the West, but let's just call her the West Coast Premier, right? The Western Canada Premier is saying, let's work with America. Let's get things done. And we're going to take a look in a few moments at the east side. I know it's not the East Coast, but Ontario Premier is saying, we're going to fight back and we're going to cut off power. Two extremely different approaches. I think what Canadians want, I obviously can't speak for everybody, certainly not everybody watching, certainly not all Canadians, but I think that people just want peaceful relations, and we're tired of the drama. We're tired of the warmongering. We're tired of the fear-mongering. We're tired of relations not working with our neighbors, with our friends. Like, come on, man. That's craziness. That's craziness what's going on. Nobody wants this. And then that was yesterday, yesterday. I believe that's what that interview was. Let's take a look now at another online interview that Danielle Smith did with Primetime Politics.
I want to begin with your conversation that you had with the South Dakota Governor, Kristi Noem, who also happens to be Donald Trump's pick for Homeland Security in the United States. I'm wondering what she had to say to you regarding the concerns raised by Mr. Trump on fentanyl and migrants along our shared border.
Well, I wanted to proactively raise that with her, that we have heard loud and clear that the president is concerned about both borders. And in Alberta, we know that one of the main concerns is the cross-border trafficking of drugs, particularly deadly fentanyl. We've been having a crisis in Alberta of opioid addiction and overdose for a number of years. And I think we jointly benefit from being able to stop organized crime and to be able to stop that flow of drugs. And we're prepared to do our part in Alberta.
Prepared to do your part. What does that actually mean?
What we have been looking at is how we might be able to use our sheriffs and some of the technologies that we developed in forest firefighting. We've been using night vision helicopters and drones with infrared capability as a ability to, we think, be able to monitor that border, hopefully working in conjunction with the Canadian Border Services as well as the RCMP, and we've indicated to the federal government that we're prepared to integrate our resources with their national plan. And barring that, we want to get at least started with our cross-border friends in Montana.
Yeah, no, I think that's the right approach. And when you're taking a look at contrast and comparison between Danielle Smith and what's going on with Ontario Premier, it is wildly different approaches, which is what we're going to take a look at right now. We're going to take a look at a series of videos here, and just bear with me because this gets kind of crazy. Here, starting off with this one.
For more than 90 minutes, Canada's political leaders met to discuss and strategize what to do about the looming Trump tariffs.
This is a serious moment for Canada, and we are resolute and determined to meet that moment.
Ever since U.S. President-elect Donald Trump announced a 25% tariff on Canadian goods, leaders of all political stripes have been lobbying their American counterparts, urging them to push back on the plan.
How you doing, everyone?
Today's meeting, though, went much further, with Ontario Premier Doug Ford saying he's prepared to stop exporting electricity to the States if necessary.
We will go to the full extent, depending on how far this goes. We will go to the extent of cutting off their energy, going down to Michigan, going down to New York State and over to Wisconsin. I don't want this to happen.
Both the provinces and the federal government are compiling lists of goods that could be slapped with retaliatory tariffs if Trump follows through with his tariff threat.
Some premiers proactively identified products that their provinces produce and export to the United States, and which the U.S. relies on, and which should be considered as part of the Canadian response.
Canada has promised more border security spending to address Trump's concerns that illegal migrants and drugs are crossing from Canada into the U.S. While the federal government stresses those numbers are small, a plan is being finalized with the provinces agreeing to pitch in.
We shared details of the border plan with premiers and received positive feedback.
That plan is expected to be finalized and presented to the Trump team by the end of the year.
Hey, Trump, by the way, we know that you threatened us with taxes. We're going to cut off your power. Now, that was just a little glimpse into what Doug Ford actually said. I want to take a look at a bit of a longer version.
Let's make no mistake about it. As I mentioned to the Prime Minister, the rest of the premiers, we need to be ready. We need to be ready to fight. This fight is coming 100% on January the 20th or January 21st. We don't know what extent this fight's going to go to, but we need to line up everything that we're going to tariff and make sure that the tariff, the money that's coming from these tariffs, don't go into a federal bank account sitting there somewhere. It needs to be immediately distributed right across the province equally, and we'll be able to support the companies, the factories, the workers for any issues that they're facing at the time. Christy at Freeland's going to put a list together. We're going to put our list together, and I'm sure the other provinces will as well. But we will go to the full extent, depending how far this goes. We will go to the extent of cutting off their energy, going down to Michigan, going down to New York State, and over to Wisconsin. I don't want this to happen, but my number one job is to protect Ontarians and Canadians as a whole, since we're the largest province. On the gear, they're going to enhance gear, get more border patrol, more sniffer dogs, if you want to call them that, patrol dogs. They're going to make sure they have more drones and more opportunities to cover the border. They have asked us, and I have agreed that we will support them, again, temporarily, as long as it takes to get through this. But again, we emphasize the border is not our responsibility. Well, I think he's being a little more aggressive than he was in the past. And I say this respectfully to the president. He's a different type of cat, to say the least. Maybe I'm a different type of cat, but you know.
No, your brother was.
I've never seen, not so much aggression, but so matter of fact. He didn't come across this way last time, and it's not helpful for both sides of the border. And at the end of the day, the consumer gets hurt. Canadians get hurt, but I can assure you one thing, the Americans are going to feel the pain as well. And isn't that unfortunate?
Did you talk to the Prime Minister about his comments about the Americans not electing Kamala Harris and how that was evidence of women's rights being under attack? Do you think that those comments are helpful?
They aren't helpful at all, and yes, it was brought up I'm not going to say who said what, but it was brought up a couple times, and in our meeting, it's not helpful at all. Donald Trump was elected democratically. If you like him or you don't like him, that's not our issue. We elect Canadians, and it was not helpful whatsoever. And I'm sure Prime Minister got the message.
So I'm going to be just vulnerable for a quick second here. This is me just playing devil's advocate and trying to check my own bias. This might be unpopular, but it is what it is. This is YouTube after all. MeTube, right? So if this were different circumstances, if Pierre was Prime Minister and this, and everyone's like, okay, we're conservatives across the board. Every premier's conservatives and agrees with Pierre. And if Trump made the same threats to Pierre as Prime Minister, would you, the viewer, would I even have a different reaction than what I do right now, than what you may have right now? Would you be, hey, let's go after America. Like, let's stand up for Canada. Like, do you think Pierre would say, okay, well, we're not just going to let America steamroll us, so we're going to stand up for ourselves? Would you back Pierre's decision? I know these are hypotheticals, and in politics, playing hypotheticals gets you nowhere. We can play hypotheticals. The politicians will never, ever, ever entertain that. That's kind of the beauty about social media, is that we have the opportunity to do that. The answer, my answer at least, and let me know down in the comments what your guys' answer is, but my answer would be I would support Pierre's decision. And that's a clear bias. I can admit that. I don't support Trudeau's decision, mostly because it's Justin Trudeau. And I have to catch myself on this, because do I think that it's good for Canada to clap back at America? If they deserve it, yeah, I don't think we should be steamrolled. Am I not against it right now because it's Trudeau and, Trudeau MPs? I know this guy's he's a conservative. I get it. He's a conservative, but come on. He's the Trudeau conservative. You know what I'm saying? He's a Trudeau conservative for Ontario. Would I have a different reaction if it wasn't this premier doing it, if it was Pierre doing it? I know these are hypotheticals. They don't matter in politics, but this again is the beauty of social media, is we have the opportunity to ask these kind of tough questions and catch our own biases and say, at least for myself, yes, if it was Pierre clapping back at Trump, I would be like, hell yeah, Canada first, baby, Canada first. We're friends with America, but don't mess with us. Don't mess with us, right? You tap on the igloo too hard, it's going to topple. Don't mess with us, right? Just ridiculous Canadian references. But because it's Trudeau managing it, it's like, oh, Trudeau's going to mess it up. Go Trump, go Trump. Trudeau's going to mess it up anyways, right? So that's just a little devil's advocate there. Again, that's not really getting anywhere other than just adding on more to the questions, more to the conversation, and playing these, these hypothetical scenarios, which again doesn't ever happen in politics. Again, when Pierre gets asked, what are you going to do if this happens, if that happens? His answer is always, it hasn't happened. We don't know if it's going to happen. So that's ridiculous for me to answer, because when you answer hypotheticals in politics, you're just falling to someone's trap, right? But again, we're not politicians. We're just average Canadians wanting to have a conversation. And my conversational piece is that I absolutely do have a bias, and it's something that I'm working on. So I haven't exactly formulated my full thoughts on that. I don't want to speak prematurely on how exactly I feel, about these tariffs, but at least I can admit that if it was Pierre being threatened with the tariffs instead of Trudeau, I would probably be like, yeah, go Pierre, fight back. We love America, we love Americans, but that's not okay. So anyways, that's enough on that. Let's take a look here at a follow-up interview that 40 Boy did.
The energy threat that you mentioned last night,
yes.
Does Ontario actually have the power to turn off the lights itself, or do you need to go to the federal government and they do it? How would that process actually work? Can Ontario do anything on its own?
Well, first of all, it's a last resort. We power 1.5 million homes, and if they put on tariffs, it's going to be unaffordable for Americans to buy electricity. Just like if they put tariffs on the 4.3 million barrels of oil that's Alberta shipping down to the U.S. If you put 25%, that increases every barrel of oil by, every gallon of gasoline by $1. So I don't think that President-elect Trump wants that to happen. What we're sending a message to the U.S., you come and attack Ontario, you attack livelihoods of people of Ontario and Canadians. We're going to use every tool in our toolbox to defend Ontarians and Canadians across the border. And let's hope that never comes to that point. Let's hope we can get through this trade deal. The problem is not with Canada. The problem is with China. And China shipping in parts to Mexico, Mexico slapping on Made in Mexico stickers, and shipping them up through the U.S. and Canada and taking American and Canadian jobs. That's the problem. And as I said yesterday, it's very, very clear. Mexico has a choice to stand with Beijing or stand with Washington.
Right. And so there you go. He's saying we don't want it to come to that. We don't want it to come to that. Then why put that out there in the first place? If you're looking for, I get what he's doing. He's trying to put a little bit of fear into Americans, saying, oh my God, our power is going to be cut off. And then for Americans socially to put pressure on Trump and, politicians in America saying, oh, turn the tariffs off. Don't threaten them with tariffs. We're not going to have power. What's going to happen? That's politics. It's greasy. It's turning people against other people. And usually it's within your own country. I didn't think that we'd be seeing this play out where it's turning Canadians against Americans. And that's why I want to have the open dialogue. On X, I do engage and entertain some of these conversations. But again, I think that this is just in poor taste all around. I don't think that Trump should have made this right. I think it should have been behind closed door conversations. But again, that's my opinion. I'd love to know yours. So that was one question for Ford, and we're going to take a look here at a follow-up question.
Other than energy, Premier, what are some other big ticket ways that Canada could retaliate against the United States?
Well, we're putting a list together along with the federal government, and all the premiers are putting a list together. We'll compile that list, have conversations with Minister of Finance, Freeland, and we'll move forward. But we can't just roll over as we're being under attack and hurting our families and our jobs. We just want to send a message. When it comes to the U.S., I want to send them more electricity. I want to send them critical minerals. I want to make sure that we have fair trade going back and forth across the border. That's what I want to do, and support them any way we can. They aren't our enemies. They're our allies. And every single governor and senator and congresswoman and men that I speak to they agree. I'll be speaking to both governors of Michigan and New York today, and I'm sure they share our same thoughts and values about giving them more electricity if they need it. That's the last thing we want to do. Would we do it? Let's wait and see.
That's the last thing we want to do, but hopefully it doesn't come to that. But it may come to that. Hopefully it doesn't, though. I don't know what to think. I don't know what to make of this yet. There's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot happening all at once. But what I will do is pass the question off to you. How do you feel about this? Are you pro Ford's move decisions to, threaten to cut off some power in America? Are you against it? Let me know your thoughts down below. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get into what's going on in the House. They're doing statements by members for couple of minutes, and then they're going to be doing starting question period, oral question. So before we get into it, before I change my screen here, I want to encourage you guys to hit the like button. We're at 1,000 likes. I don't know why I said that. That's a weird way of saying that. We're at 500 and some likes, half 1,000. Who the fuck talks like that? By the way, that was weird. I've never done that. Not doing it again. Intrusive thoughts took over. So drop a like on the stream and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. We're at 125,000 and some change, and that'd be pretty cool if we got to 126K while doing this stream. And without further ado, let's get into question period today. It's going to be pretty tense.
And poor Canadians skip dental visits due to financial constraints. Costs should never be a barrier to healthcare in Canada, and we remain committed to ensuring accessible care for all. And I wish all my constituents and all Canadians
the time is 2:15.
Happy New Year.
Order. The honourable member for Cowichan-Malahat-Langford.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to speak about my friend, my former MLA, my constituent, a proud resident of Langford, and the 36th Premier BC, the Honourable John Horgan. On Sunday, I'll be attending the memorial service for John, where we will gather to honour the lasting legacy he leaves for his family, his community, and our beautiful province. I had the privilege of knowing John for almost 20 years, and I have a lot of fond memories of our relationship. He was an excellent purveyor of dad jokes, often repeating them again and again. Among my favorites was his quip in our region about having to drive west to get to East Souk, drive east to get back to the West Shore, and drive north to get to South Cowichan. The relationship we enjoyed didn't change when he was Premier. Even when he was at a busy community event surrounded by people, he would always make sure to point me out, saying, "Hey, there's my MP." John, you were one of a kind. I will sincerely miss you.
All right, we're going to start here in a few moments.
Order. The honourable.
Thank you, Dad Talks. 279. Have you seen the Crowder video about Trudeau? No, I have not.
Is celebrating 50
I will add it to the list.
As an organization.
And David Tomes with the 1111.
And
always with the lucky numbers.
Financial education.
Dice. Thank you, sir. A little humble support for you and your family.
Has supported thousands of local citizens by helping them manage their personal finances, by fighting for responsible consumption, and through their consultations, workshops, and awareness-raising initiatives, ACEF has established itself as a key ally in promoting financial independence and debt prevention. With a committed and caring team, ACEF in Longueuil stands out for its human and personalized approach, offering indispensable support for people when they're in times of vulnerability. This anniversary is an opportunity to salute the tireless work of their staff and volunteers, as well as the profound impact that ACEF has had on the lives of so many families. Today, we are celebrating half a century of solidarity and dedication in the service of the community, and we wish ACEF continued inspiration and continued support towards a more serene financial future for the people of Longueuil. Happy 50th anniversary to the ACEF Longueuil.
Here we go.
The honourable member for Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
The Prime Minister has lost control of spending and his cabinet. Next week's fall update is teeing up to be yet another dramatic disaster because at this point, we're not even sure who the Finance Minister is going to be by Monday. The Globe and Mail reports
that's true. Freeland might be getting canned.
Have never been worse and getting more intense by the day. She wanted to run a gigantic $40 billion deficit, which she called her guardrail. Now the Prime Minister is pushing her through that guardrail and over the fiscal cliff. And now he learned he wants to humiliate her further by firing her and replacing her with carbon tax Carney. Even Liberal MPs are calling all this chaos out by saying, quote, the federal budget is not an unlimited pot and we need to show fiscal restraint. Well, that's a little late after 9 years. Yeah. This week, Prime Minister has lost control of immigration, border, spending, inflation, the debt, and even his ministers. Common sense Conservatives on this side, meanwhile, are fully united behind our leader and ready for a carbon tax election.
Yeah. Whoa.
The honourable member for Kitchener South Hesper.
Mr. Speaker, this holiday, our government followed through on its promise to put more money back into the pockets of Canadians. With a tax cut for everyone, we're making sure...
All right, folks, make sure to drop a like on the stream.
...and have a little less stress this holiday season.
The poor man's poet with the 10 US. Trump isn't dumb.
Canadian workers,
he doesn't want to slap tariffs on Canada, but Biden and Trudeau have ruined our northern border. This is a bad response to Trump's warning. Love seeing your channels grow.
While doing nothing to reduce costs for families.
Biden and Trump.
Canadians deserve better.
Biden and Trudeau did do a lot.
Our tax cut announcement is a perfect example of how our government is ensuring that workers and families can afford what they need and have saved for what they want, while Conservatives shout empty promises. That's right.
Oral questions. Questions. The Honourable Andrew Scheer.
The Prime Minister has lost control of spending and his cabinet, and the fiscal feud over the $40 billion guardrail is worse than we ever thought. New reports show that the Prime Minister is set to replace Canada's first female finance minister with his old boys network pal, carbon tax Carney. And Canadians are on the bus watching in terror as the Prime Minister is yanking her out of the driver's seat so that Carney can send us smashing through the guardrail and over the cliff. Does the Finance Minister still have her hands on the wheel, and will the deficit be below that $40 billion guardrail?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted that the first question from the Conservatives relates to the economy and the Finance Minister. Let's talk about the work she's been doing on behalf of Canadians. Yesterday,
bro, she's about to get fired.
50 basis point interest rate
right out the gate
by the Bank of Canada. That was the 5th time in a row, leading the entire G7, we've seen the interest rates come down from the Bank of Canada. On Saturday, we have a further great news for details for Canadians, which is a GST tax cut on basic essentials for every Canadian from coast to coast to coast. That's groceries, that's things that you buy for your kids for Christmas. That's great news for Canadians under the leadership of this Finance Minister.
Dude, Freeland's done. First female minister to get fired.
Even the bank admitted that they had to cut rates because the economy is performing so poorly under this NDP Liberal Prime Minister. And, you know, Canada's phantom finance minister has been pulling the strings for a while. Carbon tax Carney has been forcing radical new spending and forcing the finance minister to smash through a $40 billion guardrail. And now that Canadians are fed up and angry, the Prime Minister is going to blame her, dump her, and replace her with Carney. A classic example of an incompetent boss blaming subordinates. Does the Finance Minister not realize that she's about to join a long list of cabinet ministers that have had their careers and their reputations ruined by this Prime Minister?
There you go. Put some W's down in the chat.
Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, I'm equally delighted that he's talking about the Bank of Canada, because what has the actual Bank of Canada governor said recently? He said, quote, CPI inflation has been about 2% since the summer, and we expect it to be close to target on average over the next couple of years. On inflation, what has Tiff Macklem said? Quote, we are no longer trying to get inflation down. Government spending is not pushing against us getting inflation down. We have brought it down. That's the handiwork of this finance minister and this government, generating economic growth and being prudent with fiscal management. That's about inflation being on target 11 straight months, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Regina Capel.
If he just read a little further, he'd read that it's not because of anything the government's been doing except causing our economy to slow down and underperform. That's why they've taken this step. But a guardrail is something you're supposed to stay far away from. If you even brush up against it, it's a sign you're way off track. If you smash through it, you go flying off a cliff. Now, even Liberal MPs are terrified and are ringing the bell, trying to get off before they smash through the guardrail. One of them said, quote, "I think that if we state that we have a $40 billion guardrail, we better stay within those numbers." And another is begging for a fiscally responsible framework. Will the Prime Minister allow a free vote, or will he force his Liberal MPs to stay on that bus as it goes?
Andrew Scheer doing Andrew Scheer things.
Allow me to reference not just what the domestic Bank of Canada is talking about, but let's talk about what the IMF is stating. The IMF is projecting that Canada will have the strongest economic growth in the G7 on average in 2023 and 2024. Canada is expected to maintain its position as the country with the smallest deficit as a share of GDP among G7 countries, and still by far the lowest general government net debt as a share of GDP in the G7. What's up, Mr. Speaker? Canada's growth and leadership of the G7. That's what's up, and we're proud of it.
Nobody believes Canada's growing economy.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has lost control over spending and his ministers. The Minister for Finance promised to limit the deficit to $40 billion, but the Prime Minister pushed her to spend more. The Prime Minister, a fake feminist, by the way, can he finally admit that he's already replaced the first female finance minister with Mark Carney, an unelected man who is already pulling the strings behind the scenes? Order.
Oh, they're going crazy in the House.
Minister for Innovation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have no lessons to learn from the Conservatives, Mr. Speaker. With regards to the economy, Canadians have seen the work put forward by the Liberal government. A key interest rate at 3.25%, Mr. Speaker. A key interest rate that will help families, that will help SMEs, that will help our business people. Soon, there will be a GST vacation. It's Christmas time. I know the Conservatives. I'm sure they have a good heart. Let's celebrate Canadians and our entrepreneurs, and let us celebrate this reduction in the key interest rate. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse-Lévis. Mr. Speaker, now we've seen it all. An incompetent Prime Minister who is pushing his Finance Minister to run up a staggering $40 billion deficit. And now he's blaming her for his failure and is replacing her with an unelected man. And all the while, he struts around equal voice, claiming to be a proud feminist. What hypocrisy! Will the Prime Minister finally admit that his minister is a mere facade now, because he is forcing her to break her promise to respect a $40 billion deficit ceiling?
All right.
Order, please. Order.
Yeah, so right before the holidays, before they take a break, things get rowdy in the House. You're going to want to pay attention fully to this one.
Guards. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I see that they've learned their lessons across the way. I don't have to repeat myself, but we have a member.
Did she get those glasses out of a freaking cereal box?
How can that kind of person attack our Minister of Finance, who has implemented the Canadian childcare benefit? I hate to interrupt questions. I hate to interrupt answers.
No, you don't. You love it.
The member for Louis Saint-Laurent and the member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier to please not order. Order on both sides. Minister.
He's going to snap today. I feel it.
I will ask the Minister for Fisheries and Oceans and Coast Guards to start from the top. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, whose unhinged grandma is this?
On the other side who are heckling, doesn't bother me at all, Mr. Speaker. Women are the ones who tackle men head on. And
there's a joke there.
Shame on the opposition. Because we have a woman from Quebec, a colleague, and she dares attack our Minister for Finance, who has implemented programs like the Canadian Childcare Benefit, programs that help women when it comes to childcare, Mr. Speaker. We've implemented programs to help children. The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. Normally, it is here in this House that important votes should take place, but today it's happening in the Senate. Senators will vote upon an amendment that would sabotage C-282 and prevent it from protecting supply management. The non-elected senators will be voting whether or not to respect the desire of elected representatives from all parties to protect our farmers in trade agreements. Has the Prime Minister contacted each of his Senate appointments to tell them to vote on the right side of history, the side of democracy? The Honourable Minister for National Revenue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I agree with my colleague. Something important is happening in the Senate today. I would like to remind her, however, that now, under a Liberal government, the Senate is filled with independent senators. However, Conservative senators, they have to toe the party line. So I'd be curious to hear what they have been imposed. In any case, Mr. Speaker, you know that we have worked hard to transmit good information to senators, and we hope that they have understood how important supply management is for Canada and for Quebec. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Order, please.
Man, he said order probably 5 times already.
I appeal to all party leaders. Each and every one of them voted to protect supply management in trade agreements through Bill C-282. But today, senators will vote either to respect our will or to overturn the decision in a complete breach of the very basic principles of democracy. Leaders, the farmers of your ridings are watching you closely. Will all party leaders, starting with the Prime Minister, ask senators to defeat the amendment and pass C-282 in its entirety by Christmas? The Honourable Minister for National Revenue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Supply management is something we believe in. We will continue to protect it. We've also committed to reducing our market share. We have done everything possible to go to the very end of this bill and see it adopted because it is essential. We have to be careful, Mr. Speaker. This bill protects our producers and farmers, but until there is a government that will get rid of supply management. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie.
Jagmeet didn't even show up to work again today. What the heck?
Supply management for farmers and producers in Quebec and throughout the country. Emergency rooms are overflowing. People can't even find a family doctor. The governments in Ottawa and Quebec aren't doing what's needed, and what's more, the private sector is too expensive, it doesn't even work. Therefore, we have fewer services for Quebecers. Let us be clear, Mr. Speaker. Profit has absolutely no place in our healthcare system. It is up to the governments of Quebec and Ottawa to ensure fast and fair access to healthcare. Why aren't the Liberals doing anything at all to defend access to healthcare services for Quebecers?
Like, where the hell is Jagmeet? His Maserati wouldn't start.
Minister for Health. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Oh, absolutely, we are here.
Bowtie Beauty showed up, though.
Our universal healthcare system. And this from coast to coast to coast. That is the reason for which we have signed an agreement with every single province and every single territory to the tune of $200 million to improve our healthcare system. Absolutely. Provinces and territories have their responsibilities, but we will always be here to make sure that people can get healthcare.
The honourable member for Windsor West.
Mr. Speaker, last night the Prime Minister met with the Premier to discuss Trump's tariffs. Canadian workers were not consulted, and yet it's their jobs that are at risk. Instead of waiting for the next threat for Trump or premiers running off with their own plans, why not create a Canadian plan that protects and increases our jobs? The Conservatives parrot Trump's talking points even after they fired 1,100 border officers when they were in power. Canada needs to turn the tables on President-elect Trump by promoting Canadian jobs and a workers' plan in manufacturing and natural resources. They have Buy America. Where's our Buy Canada?
Oh, Mary Ing's taking her seat.
The Honourable Minister
somehow.
for International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians can count on our government to play as Team Canada to defend Canada's interests. Prime Minister met with the First Ministers yesterday. I proudly can say in this House that I, along with my colleagues, have met with Canadian workers all across the country from coast to coast to coast to reiterate how important this trading relationship is. Their voices, workers' voices, business voices, and all of our voices matter in this important relationship, and we're going to keep working hard to make sure that this continues to work for Canada.
Hear, hear.
Accused of Chinese foreign interference, allowed to speak in the House.
Lord Minister.
The Prime Minister has lost control of spending and his cabinet. The Finance Minister promised to cap the deficit at already reckless $40 billion, but now it turns out the Prime Minister is shoving her through her own guardrail. The fake feminist Prime Minister is setting up Canada's first female finance minister to take the hit for his reckless spending so that he can then officially bring in the unelected man who has been pulling the strings. Why is the Prime Minister bullying the Finance Minister into breaking her $40 billion deficit guardrail promise and forcing her to deliver carbon tax Carney's fiscal update?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
While the Conservatives are focused on this soap opera, Parliament Hill, grapevine, gossip, Mr. Speaker, our Liberal government has been focused on the pocketbooks of Canadians. Inflation is way down. It's at 2%, and the Governor of the Bank of Canada confirmed yesterday that it's going to stay at about 2% for the next few years. Interest rates are way down. We saw another jumbo rate cut yesterday, Mr. Speaker. That means more money in the pockets of Canadians because they're going to be able to renegotiate their mortgage at a lower rate. We're going to be able to help all Canadians that have loans, and our small businesses and entrepreneurs are going to see costs going down.
Okay.
The Honourable Member for Battleford's Lloydminster.
Canadians cannot afford this Prime Minister's fake feminism. He had the gall this week to say, and I want you to know that I am and I always will be a proud feminist. You will always have an ally in me and my government. All while working overtime behind the scene to throw Canada's first female finance minister under the bus for his reckless spending. Will the so-called feminist Prime Minister set aside his hypocrisy and admit that he is responsible for forcing the finance minister to break her $40 billion deficit promise?
They should absolutely fire the finance minister.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Speaker. I was also at the Equal Voice Gala the other night, and I heard the Prime Minister's speech. I heard him talk about all
Why does she sound scared
we've taken as a government
and
to
surprised
advance equal
simultaneously?
rights among genders, including a gender-neutral cabinet, including $10 a day childcare, including a woman's entrepreneurship strategy. I also heard the deputy leader of the Conservatives and her speech, which completely undermined the whole mission.
I really do apologize. I'm having trouble hearing.
She's still scared from Halloween, man. What the hell was that?
Members really must not take the floor when others are speaking. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Speaker. I was also at the Equal Voice Gala the other night, and I truly enjoyed the Prime Minister's speech, which listed dozens of things that we have tangibly done as a government to advance gender equality, including a cabinet that has equal numbers of men and women, including $10 a day childcare, including a female entrepreneurship strategy, $500 million going out across the country to end the process of of gender-based violence. Meanwhile, the deputy leader of the Conservatives in her speech completely undermined the whole point of equal voice, Mr. Speaker. It's very telling about what the Conservatives think about equality.
Order.
Yeah, take away her speaking torch.
The honourable member from Peterborough.
We don't want that again.
This fake feminist prime minister is determined to decimate Canadians' lives by destroying the economy, and he will throw anyone under the bus to do it, including his token finance female minister. Canadians know he's weak. They know he's lost control of his cabinet and his spending. The question is, will the first ever female finance minister have the courage to stand up to that fake feminist prime minister and stick to her promised $40 billion deficit?
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services.
Mr. Speaker, here's something tangible that the Leader of the Opposition could do. In the next election, he could run more women, and he could get more women in those seats. If he really wants to prove...
Bro, it's based off of merit.
In terms of standing up for women, let me just give you some stats, Mr. Speaker.
No. Drop an L. Drop an L. She sounds stupid.
9% of the women elected sit here in the Liberal benches. How many in the Conservative benches, Mr. Speaker? 6%.
No, it's based on merit. It's based on merit. It's based on merit, you bunch of horse crap.
Order.
You don't get a job because of your gender.
Order.
That's not how that works. We don't do diversity quotas.
I want to hear the question from the honourable member.
No wonder the Liberals suck.
The honourable member from Peterborough Kawartha.
Mr. Speaker, on the Conservative side of the House, women stand here because we're skilled and we're allowed to use our voice.
Woo! Mic drop! Yeah!
Mr. Speaker, Jody Wilson-Raybould is testament to this. That is a fake prime minister, but that is not the point. We're not here to talk about gender. We're here to talk about the economy, and it's destroyed under that fake feminist prime minister. So again, if she is not a token, will she stand up to him and say, no, I will abide by my $40 billion deficit guardrail to help this economy get back on track and save Canadians' lives?
There you go. Let's see what you got to say to that.
Know that all members are keen to return back to their constituencies for the Christmas break. But until that point, please, let us treat each other with respect. And that means letting...
Shut the hell up, speaker. Let them talk.
Standing, or when someone
yeah, put some drop mics. Put some mics down in the chat.
The Honourable Minister for Crown Indigenous Services.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that woman might feel like a token, but I never do. I earned my seat in this House of Commons.
Yeah, based off a quota, it sounds like.
And you know why they don't like numbers, Mr. Speaker? Because the numbers don't speak in their favor. There are 30% of these seats taken by women, Mr. Speaker. Fully 17% of those are here over on this side. More than half of the women elected are Liberals, Mr. Speaker, and the other half are the rest of the parties combined. So they should do their job, Mr. Speaker, as parties and get more women to run.
Dude, it's based off of merit, not a quota. It's not hard to understand.
Order. The honourable member who is about to speak is deserving of having her voice heard. The honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill.
The Prime Minister, who has long self-described as a feminist, starting in July and through anonymous sources, have repeatedly maligned Canada's first female finance minister by undermining her competency. This week, reports have suggested that the finance minister has been at odds with the Prime Minister, who's been bullying her to blow back her already exorbitant $40 billion deficit. And now we've got female cabinet ministers defending the Prime Minister's decision to bring in an unelected man to replace her job. Why?
Good question.
Yeah, man, Conservatives are
the Honourable Minister
not holding back today.
Inclusion.
Mr. Speaker, I always find it a bit rich when Conservatives talk about feminism, when their own leader will use hashtags on his YouTube videos to attract men who hate women. Mr. Speaker, it is anything but feminist when they bring forward backdoor legislation to ban abortion in this country, or when they all vote against increased funding to combat gender-based violence or to support survivors. Their leader doesn't care about women or equality. He only cares about himself. Shame on them, Mr. Speaker.
Order. The Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Well, the fact remains, Mr. Speaker, that after months of reports that the Prime Minister wanted to turf Canada's first female finance minister, we find out today that he's in talks to put an unelected, conflict of interest riddled man into the role. Yeah. The Globe and Mail story must have really stung for every single Liberal backbencher who has carried the water of this scandal-plagued Prime Minister for years. Why wouldn't they be getting this job? So my question is this. Does the Prime Minister really think that there is nobody, no one in the elected Liberal caucus who could be the finance minister? Anybody? Qualified. No one?
Oh, that's got to sting.
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the nature of the questions coming from the opposition today speak more about their opposition to feminism than it does our commitment to feminism. But that's typical, Mr. Speaker.
Ad hominems.
Speak louder than words in this case. When we brought forward things like the Canada Child Benefit or childcare, actual policies that help women, what did the Conservatives do? They voted against it. When we stand up for a woman's right to choose, what do the Conservatives do? They vote against it, bring in backdoor legislation to make it harder to access sexual health and reproductive rights in this country. When we work to make contraceptives free in this country, what do the Conservatives do? Stand in opposition. The real fake feminists are those folks on the other side of the Conservatives.
À l'ordre, s'il vous plaît.
It's getting crazy in the House.
Order, please.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, the report on Islamophobia tabled by the Justice Committee recommends that the federal government implement all the proposals made by the Senate in 2023 on the matter of Islamophobia. The Senate's recommendations, however, are a full-out attack on Quebec's secularism, which the Senate considers racist and Islamophobic. If this report was intended to combat Islamophobia, it has failed. It promotes Quebec bashing by claiming that Bill 21 encourages racism in Quebec. The government must reject the entire anti-Quebec report by the Justice Committee. Will it do so? The Honourable Minister for Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like my colleague knows full well, committees of this House are independent. They have the right and the duty to do the work that they want to do. Their recommendations are publicly shared, of course. And like all other members of this House, we will read these recommendations and see how they could be used or not be used. The Honourable Member for Drummond. The Justice Committee has taken up the demand by Amira El-Gawabi that teachers be chosen on the basis of their religion rather than their competence. So what does Ottawa have to do with the hiring of university professors? Is there a Minister for Higher Education in Ottawa and they forgot to tell us in Quebec? Secondly, this proposal is the opposite of secularism. It's bringing religion back into our schools. And we saw what happened in Bedford and Saint-Maxime. Quebecers want nothing to do with this. When will this government stop attacking Quebec's secular model? The Honourable Minister for Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, committees of this House are independent. They do the work they deem to be useful for Canada and Canadians. Quebec universities are also independent and do the work that they wish to do with their jurisdictions and responsibilities. The Honourable Member for Drummond. The Senate has issued a report accusing Quebec secularism of all the wrongs. The Minister for Immigration says nothing. Amira El-Gawabi calls Quebecers anti-Muslim. The Immigration Minister has remained silent. The Justice Committee tables a report repeating the Senate's anti-secularism arguments. Not a problem for the Minister for Immigration. Ottawa proposes choosing teachers based on their religion. Still great news for the Immigration Minister, apparently. But if François Legault wants to defend Quebec secularism, the Minister suddenly loses his temper and condemns a Quebec Premier. Why is this Minister lashing out at Quebec in particular? The Honourable Minister for Public Works and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bloc MPs are doing everything they can to seek out squabbles, but we're not going to be part of this.
We're just going to refuse to debate.
I'm not quite sure what happened on the other side of the aisle, but when it is not your turn to talk, when you're not recognised, it's important to not speak. If you want to have a chat among yourselves or a squabble among yourselves, then you can do so in the antechambers.
Member from Halton, Norfolk.
The Prime Minister has lost control of spending in his cabinet. The Liberals are about to smash through a $40 billion deficit guardrail. The media is reporting that the Prime Minister is forcing inflationary spending on Canada's first female finance minister by forcing her to break through the $40 billion deficit guardrail and pushing our country over a fiscal cliff. Everybody knows that Mark Carney is the de facto finance minister. So why is this Prime Minister bullying the first female finance minister and forcing her to take the fall?
Call yourself a feminist, but
the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of
you're hurting women.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think what we're seeing here today is Conservatives trying to make feminism great again. But what they actually do is they don't elect women to their party. The leader actually uses
So are they against making feminism great again?
hashtags that promote violence against women. Mr. Speaker, they don't support reproductive health care for women. They want to ban abortion health care for women. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to feminism, it's pretty clear Conservatives are struggling, and this seems like a fight they don't want to take with us.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense.
Order. The Honourable Member for Haldeman Norfolk.
Mr. Speaker, feminism will always be great when there's no tokenism. The hypocrisy minister knows no bounds. He lectures everybody else.
That was an interesting clapback.
Saying women's rights and women's progress are
À l'ordre, s'il vous plaît.
Order, please.
The Honourable Member from Halton, Norfolk. Please start again.
Mr. Speaker, feminism will always be great when there's no tokenism. The hypocrisy of this Prime Minister knows no bounds.
What are they going to say to that?
Everyone else about progress, saying women's rights and women's progress are under attack. My question for this Prime Minister is, will he park his hypocrisy and stop attacking the rights of women in his own caucus? Is this fake feminist Prime Minister going to really bully Canada's first female finance minister and have her read Carbon Tax Carney's update on Monday?
The Honourable Minister for Crown Indigenous Services. For Indigenous Services.
That member is fully endorsed by the anti-abortion organizations that look for candidates, indeed a full 40 of them over there, that bully women when they want to make choices about their own reproductive freedom. Mr. Speaker, it's a little bit rich for members of Parliament from the opposition to get up and stand up, say they stand up for women, when on the backside, they're working as hard as they can to restrict women's freedom in this country.
Come on, dear.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sorry, my apologies. Order, please. The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister, this fake Feminist Prime Minister is out of control. Time to take stock. He's lost control of immigration. He's lost control of the management of public funds. He's lost control of his own ministers. And now he's bickering with his finance minister. She's already plunging Canada deep into a huge deficit, but the Prime Minister says we can always go deeper. He even plans to replace her with Mark Carney, a non-elected official, if she doesn't do what he wants. On Monday, will the minister present her economic statement or Mark Carney's?
Oh, for sure it's going to be Carney's. For sure it's going to be Carney's.
The Honourable Minister for National Revenue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What's absolutely disgusting in the discourse we're hearing today, like calling the Prime Minister a fake feminist when he has shown umpteen times that he is a real feminist, while they, on the other side, the Prime Minister has been committed to equality, to women, to the rights of women in many ways. What they are doing across the way, these people that love petty politics by putting hashtag to attract misogynist men, what they are doing is showing full disdain for the Minister for Finance.
I can't believe that we're hearing the Conservatives say that Freeland's going to be fired on Monday.
I would like to tell the member for Paul Neuf, I can't see that he's had a chance to ask his question. I asked people to quiet down so they could listen to his question, and I would ask him to do the same for others and to not take the floor unless he's been recognized by the chair.
The honourable member for Vancouver East.
Settlement services agencies have received notice of massive funding cuts of up to 70%.
No watermelon pen.
This will decimate the delivery of critical services to help integrate newcomers. Two NDP provinces, BC and Manitoba, seem to be targeted with the deepest cuts. Case in point, after 3 decades of providing essential language training to newcomers, Vancouver Community College will lose all of their funding, even though 92% of the students get employment afterwards. Why are the Liberals punishing newcomers, settlement service agencies, and VCC's wildly successful language training program?
Good question. The Honourable Minister for Immigration, Citizenship and Refugees.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every 5 years we review the funding model for the settlement services to welcome newcomers, to let them learn, make sure that they learn English, make sure that they learn French, integrate them to the new country, overcome trauma. This is something that we can be very proud of as a country. Obviously, this year we have reduced the levels of people that we are welcoming into the country. That comes with some cuts and some readjustments, but clearly this is a sector that is critical to the integration of newcomers. We will continue to fund it generously and continue to help people integrate to this beautiful country that's the best in the world.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Albertans are paying
No watermelon pen.
of dollars in
That's
healthcare
visible.
fees for their aged loved ones who are stuck in hospitals because there are no spaces in long-term care. This is one more example of how Daniel Smith is turning our universal public healthcare system into a U.S.-style for-cash system. We know the Conservatives would cut public healthcare, and in true Liberal fashion, this government is clearly too weak to stand up to Smith's privatization scheme.
You can't talk about provincial matters
While Albertans are forced to pay to get
on a
the
federal
care their
platform.
loved ones deserve.
The Speaker should have put an end to that. You can't talk about provincial matters.
The Honourable Minister for Health.
No, that's a breach right there.
Every part of our health system must be transformed into a system of prevention rather than a system of illness. We are doing our part. In fact, I would point out just this week announcing 1.25 million Canadians who've received care under dental care. Moving forward with pharmacare. Deals with every province and every territory. And yes, provinces must be held to account and be responsible for their share, for the portion that they carry and have burden for. We will lead nationally, and we demand that everybody rise to this moment to transform our health system.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Pontiac. Mr. Speaker,
Yeah,
the holidays should be a stress-free period for Canadians, for all Canadians. But we know that that's unfortunately not the case for some. And during the holidays, sometimes there are extra expenses which can make it hard for some families. I'd like to hear from the Minister what our government's plan is to help families during difficult times for certain families. The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans. Mr. Speaker, whether it be the Canada Child Benefit, the Canada Workers Benefit, or tax breaks for small business, we will always be there for Canadians. With the GST break, we will be giving Canadians a little more money to spend during the holidays. The Grinches on the other side of the house only have empty promises.
The Grinches on the other side of the house. Bro, you're the government.
Partisan games.
You're the literal government. How are you blaming other people?
Significant support to Canadians.
This is so mental.
The honourable member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
The Prime Minister lost control of spending in his cabinet. He sent this spending spat spiraling out of control, forcing his finance minister to smash through her $40 billion deficit guardrail promise. He then solidified his fake feminist credentials by appointing Carbon Tax Carney as the de facto finance minister after using her. Even the PBO confirmed they smashed through their $40 billion deficit guardrail by at least $6 billion. Will the Prime Minister confirm the deficit is not a penny over $46 billion?
Wow. There you go. Just confirm right now. Why wait till Monday? Just confirm.
And ask members not to make noises. There's actually rules in this place for us not to be slamming desks anymore.
Well, there's rules, is there?
Parliamentary Secretary. I'm certain the honourable member had finished his question. Yes, he had. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance.
It seems that we've lost decorum in the House, Mr. Speaker, in part because the Conservatives have been attacking female elected representatives, women in this House who represent women and men across the country proudly, Mr. Speaker. If the Conservatives are really interested in asking questions of the economy, I do have answers for them. Yesterday, the Bank of Canada lowered interest rates yet again, making it easier on Canadians to buy a new home, making it easier on families that need to renew their mortgage, making it easier on Canadians that have loans, Mr. Speaker. We're keeping our eye on the ball. We're keeping our eye on the interests of Canadians.
The honourable member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
Well, the last time the bank dropped 50 basis points on the interest rate was 9/11, the global financial crisis, and COVID. And Carbon Tax Carney's comeback fueled his fiscal feud further. The weak Prime Minister used the Finance Minister to rack up debt, and now he's going to replace another female minister, but this time with Davos elite Carbon Tax Carney. This just to smash through his $40 billion deficit guardrail and drive Canada's finances off a fiscal cliff. Once again, will the Prime Minister confirm the deficit won't be a penny past $46 billion?
They're going to fudge the numbers, man. That's why they're waiting until Monday. There's got to be something sketchy going on.
To the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Listening to the Conservatives today, you would think that the Conservative Party of Canada wanted interest rates to be higher, Mr. Speaker. You would think that the Conservatives want inflation to be higher, Mr. Speaker, listening to their talking points today in the House of Commons. Mr. Speaker, we have invested in Canadians and we have invested wisely. We have ensured that 110,000 more Canadian women have entered the workforce thanks to our early learning and childcare program. This has saved families nearly 30% in childcare, but it has also created $32 billion of greater wealth in our economy. Mr. Speaker, we are growing the economy and we're doing it wisely.
No, you're not. You're harming the economy.
The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has lost control of his finances and his cabinet. We all know that there's a fiscal feud between the finance minister and the prime minister. She promised Canadians that the deficit would not exceed $40 billion, which was her fiscal guardrail. When you smash through a guardrail, it's too late to break. You just end up falling off the cliff. Will the prime minister promise that the deficit will not exceed $40 billion? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance. The Conservatives seem to be asking about the economy, Mr. Speaker, but actually, they are desperately trying to deny the fact that yesterday the Bank of Canada reduced interest rates in order to help Canadians, Mr. Speaker. That's great news. That will make life more affordable for families that need to renew their mortgage. It will also let our SMEs and entrepreneurs have lower costs and will help young people who are aiming to buy their first home. The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has completely lost control of spending, and he's lost control of his cabinet. He's bringing in radical spending increases and is sacrificing his own Minister of Finance. And he, in fact, wants to replace her by a man by the name of Mark Carney, who has not even been elected. Canadians have already fallen victim to this government's disastrous mismanagement, and now they will be paying for the deficit. Can the Prime Minister confirm that the deficit will not exceed $40 billion? The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans. Mr. Speaker, we've already answered that question, but what I'd like to know...
She's the female
we,
Harry Pot smoker.
On this side of the House, have brought in actual programs to support women. How is it that the Conservative Party has voted against investment in programs like our programs to support seniors, for example, when we know that women tend to live longer than men? They voted against programs for childcare. They voted against school lunch programs, Mr. Speaker. They voted against dental care. And they're going to keep doing that kind of thing. The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Well, Mr. Speaker, it's clear now. The car map is a complete fiasco. Already, it was going to exceed its budget by 50%. The bill had climbed to $556 million, but then in March, maintenance costs had brought that to $625 million. That was in March, so that means that by today, things might actually have climbed above $800 million. And the app probably has cost a lot since it started being used as well, because it broke down 22 times in a single month. So as of today, what is the real cost of this fiasco?
Secretary to the Minister for Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as it's been clarified in the House, the CARM system was to replace a 36-year-old system that was at risk of failure. This was actually developed in 2010, this process under the previous government, and it was to address concerns raised by the Auditor General in Canada that we risked 20% of our goods at the border being misclassified. Mr. Speaker, we're going to ensure that the new system is working and there aren't delays at the border.
L'honorable député de Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte.
The Honourable Member, whenever the Liberals take on some kind of digital project, well, the bill is pretty high. Imagine what happened with Phoenix, which is still causing nightmares for public servants 9 years later, or ArriveCan, which was supposed to cost $80,000, but instead ended up costing $16 million, which was mostly
the Phoenix system for
businesses that did not offer services.
Federal employees is like totally broken.
$625 million, probably more, but we don't know because the government doesn't want to tell us the real costs, as we just saw. Why is it that each time the Liberals take on a digital project, it ends up turning into a scandal?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the question because it's an important reminder that the CARM system that was replacing a 36-year-old system actually put at risk assessing $40 billion worth of duties and taxes annually. Mr. Speaker, we have to make investments to ensure that the border system and processing of these taxes and duties are being done efficiently and effectively for today's businesses, and we've ensured that any IT issues that need to be worked out are not impacting borders or any delays at those borders.
The Honourable Member for Bay of Quinte.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has lost control of his spending, his cabinet, even his own MPs. And is this government is set to blow through the $40 billion deficit guardrail. Canadians are feeling it everywhere, including the grocery store, a place the Prime Minister has never been. It's not just Canadians, his own MPs are feeling it. The member from Thunder Bay said his personal preference would be to see the government run a $0 deficit, but that won't happen. Mr. Speaker, since the Prime Minister won't visit grocery stores, won't listen to Canadians, will at least listen to his own Liberal MPs and decide not to run a dime after $40 billion.
Here. The question.
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'm glad to hear the member opposite talk about groceries because I have great news for him. This House actually passed a GST tax holiday over the next couple of months to reduce the cost of groceries. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry, I forgot that member and all members of the Conservative Party.
You should be thanking us. 60 days, no GST.
They want a tax break for Canadians. When it comes time to actually giving them one, they're opposed to it. But on this side of the House, we're happy to be able to provide that extra relief to Canadians on groceries, on toys for kids, on clothing for kids, and other essential items.
Isn't there like little to no GST already on groceries?
Mr. Speaker, this government's so out of touch, they don't even understand that that's only saving Canadians $4.51 because there is no GST on groceries, just pop and chip.
Oh!
The unemployment rate is up to 6.4%. This Prime Minister has lost control. And as this government is set to blow through
That's why somebody super chatted me $4.51 the other day.
MPs thinking about unemployment.
Was it Ryan Williams? This MP?
It's not an unlimited pit, and importantly, the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister are not even talking. Before the Prime Minister loads up his MPs on the unemployment bus, will he tell them about the $40 billion deficit guardrail, or will he just drive them over the fiscal cliff?
Shoo!
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
You know, Mr. Speaker, for many Canadians, the GST tax holiday actually makes a difference. Just because it doesn't make a difference for that member of Parliament doesn't mean it isn't meaningful for many Canadians. Right. And when I speak to constituents in my community, when I speak to small business owners, when I speak to restaurants, they've told me how important this GST tax holiday is going to be for them over the next couple of months. So just because the tax break isn't meaningful for Conservative MPs doesn't mean it isn't meaningful for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Cumberland Colchester.
Speaker, the Prime Minister has lost control of his spending and his cabinet. He is also bullying the Finance Minister into crashing through the $40 billion deficit guardrail. Even Liberal MPs are uncomfortable with the financial consequences. Ask the member from St. John Rossay, who was quoted calling for fiscal restraint, or the member from Thunder Bay Rainy River, who said that he wanted a zero deficit, which we all know is not going to happen with this NDP Liberal government. If the Finance Minister crashes the deficit through the $40 billion guardrail, will the feckless Prime Minister allow a free vote for his MPs?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Interesting that the Conservative member chose to talk about bullying in his question after today's question period, which has been fraught with bullying from Conservative members. To get back to what's important to Canadians, I would like to talk about the economy. You see, Mr. Speaker, when looking at the numbers, we can see that consumer confidence is up. We see consumer spending is up. And, Mr. Speaker, folks are looking forward to the tax holiday that is also coming up. On Saturday, we will be removing federal taxes. We'll be removing GST from everyday goods in order to help Canadians with a tax cut I know they need.
There's no GST on groceries, dumbass. Okay, read the next name, man. What the hell are you doing? Rick Perkins is standing up.
The Honourable Member for Ottawa-Vanier. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What a crock.
Yes. Yesterday, I was very pleased to visit Willis's College dental assisting students to celebrate the first anniversary of the beginning of the Canada Dental Care Plan, which will enable more than 3 million additional Canadians to consult a dentist, because 1 out of 4 Canadians has avoided seeing the dentist because of the expense. Could the Minister tell us how this plan is making life more affordable for Canadians? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. I'd like to thank my colleague for Ottawa Vanier for an excellent question. The bad news is that when you ask the Leader of the Opposition why he's against the dental plan, he says it's because it doesn't exist. And he's discouraging seniors from signing up. But the good news is that they are not fooled by what he's saying. 2 million Quebecers, 3 million Canadians have successfully signed up to the dental care program, which has saved them on average $760 a year since they signed up. This is very good news for all Quebecers and bad news for the Conservative leader.
The honourable member for Calgary Centre.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has lost control of spending and his cabinet. Former advisor to two Prime Ministers, Robert Asselin, has said the rising debt burden limits Canada's ability to act during future economic slowdowns and unforeseen circumstances. The Minister of Finance set a fiscal guardrail of a $40.1 billion deficit in her last budget that looks drastically off the rails. This isn't just a number. It's a glaring sign of systemic overspending and poor fiscal planning. The Liberals' choice now is clear. Will they heed their former advisor or drive Canada's deficit off a cliff?
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, this member is so frail that he forgot that Canada, actually, Mr. Speaker, is the land of opportunity and possibilities. You don't need to ask me, Mr. Speaker. Talk to CEOs who have invested in this country, Mr. Speaker. Just in 2023, we landed the largest investment in Dow's history in Fort Saskatchewan, Alberta, Mr. Speaker. I think the Conservatives should all rejoice. It's Christmas, Mr. Speaker. I hope they're going to put that in their Christmas card to their constituent to thank this Liberal government for bringing jobs in Alberta.
Shut the hell up, you chihuahua.
Well, member for Calgary Centre.
That's the minister that's never seen a check he didn't want to sign of Canadian taxpayer dollars. Well, former Liberal advisor Robert Asselin also stated you can't pick and choose fiscal anchors as you go and renege on a commitment you made only a year ago. There's a huge disconnect here. The Prime Minister wants to spend away to popularity, and the Finance Minister is trying to hang on to a shred of fiscal accountability. Liberals are famous for taking no lessons, but this one's an obvious choice. How far past the guardrails is the Prime Minister pushing the Finance Minister's credibility?
There you go. Conservatives are pretty witty.
The Honourable Minister for Innovation. Order, please. The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Someone sneeze.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for the question. Mr. Speaker, actually, there's more good news for their Christmas card, because let me talk about another investment in Canada, Mr. Speaker. This time, BHP, Mr. Speaker, the largest mining company in the world, have made its largest investment in its history in Saskatchewan, Mr. Speaker. In Saskatchewan, close to $20 billion, their largest investment in their history. Mr. Speaker, I hope again that in their Christmas card that they're going to send to their constituent, they're going to thank this Liberal government for bringing jobs in Western Canada, growing our energy sector, and making sure
All right, sit down, Chihuahua.
Member for St. Margaret's, South Shore St. Margaret's.
The Liberal minister is so informed he doesn't even know Canada Post is on strike. Another lost cabinet minister. More leaking Liberals are speaking out about the economic disaster of this Prime Minister who's decided to crash through his $40 billion deficit guardrail promise, an obscene number in its own. Yeah. And the Liberal MP for St. John said that Liberals need to show fiscal restraint, like that's going to happen. Crashing through his promised $40 billion deficit will increase the cost of food. So if the deficit guardrail is broken and driven right through, will the Prime Minister allow his Liberal MPs a free vote?
L'honorable ministre des Pêches Océans et de la Garde.
Holy smokes, that was good.
Minister of Solutions.
There's always one, eh?
I've already answered this question. What I
That
want
answer's
to
in
know
French.
from my colleague across the way, who is from the Atlantic region, what I want to know is how they could vote against investments in small vessel ports. How could they vote against investments in the Coast Guard? How could they vote against, in the supplementary estimates, how could they vote against investing in fuel for the Coast Guard so that they could help save our fishers when they're experiencing problems offshore? It's a crying shame.
again, when members are afforded the respect to ask a question, I'd expect them that they would also have the respect to listen to the answer. Minister, please. L'honorable député de Sudbury.
Mr. Speaker, from supporting wildfire response here in Canada to deterring aggression through our multinational battle group in Latvia, members of our armed forces have continuously stepped up to keep Canadians safe so we can live in a more secure and peaceful world. For our armed forces who are separated from their families while on deployment, this can be a hard time of the year. Can the Minister of National Defence tell us how our government continues to support our armed forces so they can do the crucial work of keeping us safe at home?
The Honourable Minister for National Defence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to begin by thanking the member from Sudbury for her question, but also for her hard work on our very hard-working Defence Committee. As we head into the holiday season, I would like to take this opportunity to express our sincere gratitude to all members of the Canadian Armed Forces and to the entire Defence team. They've answered the call to serve and defend their country, and they have our confidence, our pride, and our gratitude. I also wish to extend our thanks to their families and all who support them in this essential work. Mr. Speaker, à tous les membres des Forces Armées Canadiennes.
To all the members of the Canadian Armed Forces, I would wish them a very happy holidays and a happy new year.
From Courtney, Alberta.
Mr. Speaker, for 70 years, Friendship Centres have served as vital community hubs for urban Indigenous peoples. Now they're on the front line of Canada's mental health crisis, the toxic drug crisis, and catastrophic climate events like floods and forest fires. But federal funding hasn't kept up. The National Association of Friendship Centres are clear in that they need $62 million of federal funding annually to meet their demands. The Liberals keep letting Indigenous people down with their chronic underfunding. Will this government finally provide Friendship Centres with long-term, sustainable funding?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister for Mental Health and Addictions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the member for his question. And I agree with him. Friendship Centres provide essential services to some of our most vulnerable people in our communities. Their network offers culturally appropriate, mindful support to navigate healthcare systems, finding safe shelter, and learning Indigenous languages, as well as supporting our Indigenous communities when they go into urban centres. They also provide mental health services. But, Mr. Speaker, with this work, $32 million goes to them every year, and our government has committed an additional $60 million through Budget 2024. There is more work to do. They do incredible work across communities in Canada, and we'll work with them.
The Honourable Member for Richmond, Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, in my riding there are several businesses that are struggling because they can't renew their temporary foreign workers' work permits because now they're over the new threshold, which the government lowered by 10%. The unemployment rate is extremely low right now. So these businesses' survival is threatened. And in addition, there's the human cost of these workers who may need to leave the country against their will and their families. So what will the Prime Minister do to help these businesses to keep this essential workforce while also respecting immigration rules?
Should be deporting all of the people that their visas have expired.
Came to power, our government has
and
made
securing our
significant
borders
changes to this program. The temporary foreign workers program needs to meet the real-time needs of the labor force market. For Canadians, we have tightened up the program because there have been changes in the labor market. We are listening to what Canadians need, and we will take strong action. Thank you.
Colleagues, following discussions among representatives from all parties, I understand that there is an agreement to observe a moment of silence in memory of John Horgan, former Premier of British Columbia. À la suite de discussions.
Yeah, that's all right, man. I think that's where we're gonna end the stream, folks. That was a pretty decent. We got another video pulled up. We got some more videos pulled up, actually. A couple more videos that I didn't get to do before question period. That was a pretty good stream. That was actually a half decent question period, considering the fact that Pierre wasn't there. I totally thought he would be there. And that it's, right before the holidays, Trudeau's not there. It's kind of like, just people that are forced to be at their jobs, right? Like, I don't know where Pierre is. Maybe he went back to his constituency. I have no idea, but nonetheless, still pretty good. Definitely some good zingers. Scheer's pretty funny. Like, I like Scheer. He's a master troller. And that's some really good points that Freeland will be fired on Monday, right? When she gives the economic plan, and a lot of speculation that she's not going to be giving her own fall economic update, and that's going to be Mark Carney's. So we don't actually know yet whose economic plan they're going to be reading or economic update, whether it's Freeland's or Carney's, but nonetheless, it's not looking good for Freeland. In fact, the video that I want to play next is that of Freeland giving a bit of a announcement here. It's all breaking news all over the banners. Let's take a look here. Let's take a look.
Discuss the relationship between Canada and the U.S.
Relationship is balanced and mutually beneficial. How Canada is the largest market for the United States, larger than China, Japan, the UK, and France combined. We discussed how all of us are working hard to explain the value of that economic relationship to our American counterparts, that it is a win-win. The Prime Minister started the meeting by thanking premiers for their active and effective outreach work. We are taking a Team Canada approach. A number of premiers spoke out strongly in favor of a robust Canadian response to unjustified tariffs. Some premiers proactively identified products that their provinces produce and export to the United States, and which the U.S. relies on, and which should be considered as part of the Canadian response. This included some critical minerals and metals. We are taking a Team Canada approach. We know that this is a moment when Canada needs to be strong, smart, and united. And we know that when Canada is strong, smart, and united, when we play as a team, we can be effective and we will win. We recognize, the Prime Minister, Minister LeBlanc, and I, and all of the premiers, that this is a serious moment for Canada, and we are resolute and determined to meet that moment. Nous comprenons que c'est un moment sérieux pour le Canada.
So everything is guised under this Team Canada approach. They're doing changes, economic policies, Team Canada. It's just branding at this point, right? What they're doing is harming Canada. They're team against Canada.
And strong team. As I'll turn it over to
on the thing. Good evening, bonsoir tout le monde.
Hello.
As
Good
Christy
evening.
said, the Prime Minister began the hour-and-a-half-long conversation by thanking the premiers for their outreach to Americans. He noted, for example, Premier Ford having launched ads in the United States, going on Fox News. Premier Smith going to the Western Governors Association, also going on Fox News. Le Premier Ministre a remercié
the Prime Minister thanked Premier Legault for having
quant à la nature
raised awareness
to the
punitors last week.
Our border plan, with an overview of our border plan. He stressed that illegal migration from Canada to the United States is only 0.6% of the total, and Canadian fentanyl is 0.2% of the total of U.S. seizures. But we also obviously acknowledge that one fentanyl pill is one fentanyl pill too many, and that we committed to continuing to work, obviously, with American authorities, both on the issue of illegal migration and the issue of synthetic drug seizures. We shared details of the border plan with premiers and received positive feedback. We were encouraged by their desire to contribute provincial personnel, provincial assets to this work. It was a conversation where premiers were as specific as talking about certain vehicles that could contribute and different provincial personnel that could work with the RCMP or Canadian Border Services. The idea of jointly working together was very encouraging for us. We're going to incorporate many of the positive suggestions that the premiers made into finalizing our border plan. And then obviously a priority will be to share details of this plan with the incoming Trump administration and with Canadians in the coming days. Nous avons eu des discussions fort intéressantes et fort
with the premiers. We shared, and they've made suggestions.
Aux effectifs provinciaux.
Support was encouraged by the Canadians. We'll have details. This conference, but this is also
it's all in French. Yeah, I mean, if you pay attention, like during this entire speech, look at her face, right? Just scroll back and look at her face. She knows she's done. Absolutely. Right. This has been said in the question period that we just saw. It's all showing that the end is near for Chrystia Freeland. And she's being very much replaced by carbon tax Carney. And I want to end things off with this video right here. Trump and Trudeau trade barbs during tough tariff talks. So let's wrap things up with this.
Relationship between Ottawa and incoming U.S. President Donald Trump doesn't appear to be getting any friendlier as tough tariff talks continue.
Let's check in right now to Ottawa. Jeremy Sharon standing by with more on this. Jeremy, the back and forth jabs continue between Trudeau and U.S. officials. The question all of us are wondering now is kind of where does this relationship, supposedly one of the best friendships and allyships in the world, stand at this point?
That's a great question, Nick. And you know, I think many are wondering exactly where it stands. And the latest in this saga of this strained relationship are comments coming from Elon Musk, who we know will be part of the Trump administration, an advisor to the prime minister, or to the president-elect, rather, and who is expected to play somewhat of a significant role in this administration. We heard from Elon Musk yesterday on social media platform X that he believes Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is an insufferable tool who won't be in power for much longer.
Yes.
So that is in response to comments that Prime Minister Trudeau made on Tuesday at a gala here in Ottawa, saying that the Harris's election loss is a setback for women's progress in the U.S. He said that for the second election in a row, U.S. voters chose not to elect a female president. So, you know, that is the criticism that the Prime Minister faced from Elon Musk for those comments. And, you know, we know that he's facing criticism from within for those comments as well. A premiers meeting that happened yesterday between the Prime Minister and premiers from across the country. We know that Premier Doug Ford brought up those comments and said that they were not helpful, and that the premiers kind of sent a clear message to the Prime Minister that making comments like that are not helping his case and are not helping this strained relationship.
Okay. Jeremy, going back to Trump now, Time Magazine has named him as its Person of the Year.
Yeah.
For the second time. I think when you look back at 2024, kind of no surprise here.
Yeah.
Yeah, no surprise. When you look at the criteria that Times Magazine uses to choose its Person of the Year, it's really the person who's had the most effect, the most influence on people and things that have happened throughout that year, whether they are good or bad. And so, yeah, you know, he was on a short list with a number of other people, including Vice President Kamala Harris, Elon Musk, Benjamin Netanyahu, and Kate, the Princess of Wales. Last year, the Times Person of the Year was Taylor Swift, who had a massive impact on things that happened in 2023 and continued this year. Yeah. I think it's a fair assessment that Donald Trump has had a huge impact on things that have happened in 2024. And so that's why we're seeing him today as Times Person of the Year. He rang the bell as well, or is expected to ring the bell at the New York Stock Exchange. Yeah, it's pretty sick. Kind of coinciding with this naming of being Times Person of the Year. So yeah, kind of an interesting nod to Trump.
Is indeed. Okay, yeah. Jeremy Sharon live in Ottawa today. Appreciate the updates.
It definitely feels like the tides are turning for the better in America, which is going to have a ripple effect around the entire world. I just hope that Canada doesn't stay. I can't even say end up in the crosshairs of America, because as we know, we are already in the crosshairs. In fact, they seem to have their finger on the trigger, so to speak. But I really hope that we can get out of their line of sight and become friends and just change Canada for the better. Have a more conservative, Republican, just pro-Canada, Canada first approach to our economy, our jobs, our healthcare, our tourism, our travel, everything here in Canada. We have a real opportunity with the upcoming election, whenever that is, to make a really good informed decision, conservative, and change things for the better. At least try to. That's all we can do at this point. But again, that's my opinion. I'd love to know yours. To wrap things up for this live stream, we are going to take a look here at, I'm going to read off the super chats. So Ronald Rogers with the $1.99 super sticker, no message attached. Oh, I guess it's a super sticker. Want to party with the 2 saying, God bless you. All times get tough, stay strong. I appreciate that. The T-Bosh, Tatia Wallace with a 6-month membership. Liberals are not pro-life. Thank you for that. That's a good hedge against inflation. Buy your long-term membership now. Want to party with the gifted membership, gifted sub. Thank you for that. I don't know who got that, but that's appreciated. Jordan English with the 5 saying, she's so condescending. Oh, we're giving them that $4.51. They should be happy. It's meaningful. Like for who? WTF can, what the heck can $5 even buy these days? That's right. I mean, you can buy a super chat. You just spent $5 on a super chat. So there you go. That's that's a good point. Woody Doppelganger with a 5 saying, the libs are failing when all they have left, as a quote, is identity politics. Just be accountable and transparent. That's the final Hail Mary that the Liberals have, is identity politics. They just pick at that. And today was pretty interesting because they brought up Leslyn Lewis, who's not only a woman, but a black woman. And she, said, we need to stop the tokenism, which is a crazy thing to say. Like, what's a liberal going to say to that, right? We all know what that means. But good for the conservatives today. They really clapped back. They really did a good job of making the liberals look like absolute idiots. Freeland especially. I mean, she wasn't even there to defend herself. She probably would have cried. Caesar with the 5. Here is the measly money the liberals will save me. Then they will hike all taxes in February. FJT, resign or be defeated in the next election. I'm noticing a trend. A lot of people are super chatting the amount that they would be getting back from the GST rebate on food, $4.50 to $5. It's kind of funny. I appreciate it, guys. I appreciate that. It's pretty funny. Fosilio with the 1 European super sticker or message. No message there. Hummer with the $6.99. The Conservatives should just say that if the deficit is over $40 billion, they have to call a carbon tax election. Like and subscribe. You guys are funny. The super chats, folks, are meant for you guys to just say messages that I read out loud. They're not meant for you guys to then add in, use your character limit to say like and subscribe. That's for me to say. And if you haven't yet already, now would be a great time to like and subscribe, by the way. That's my job. Stop doing my job for me. Stop doing the things that I'm supposed to do for me. I appreciate it. Let me have something. Big Mike 44 at the 279. She is done and it shows on her face. And that was about Freeland. Yes. Yeah, I saw that message. That's why I actually had that talking point when we were showing that last video. Folks, that's where we're going to end it. thanks so much. I don't know if I'll be streaming tomorrow. I don't really stream on Fridays. And then we're left with Monday, and that's going to be the fall economic update. We're going to have to wait and see how that plays out. So stay tuned. Make sure you turn post notifications on for this channel and for the main channel of Mr. Sunshine Baby, because we don't know what's going to happen this weekend. And next week is going to be just a shotgun approach. Monday, Tuesday, bam, they voted. The Conservatives wanted yesterday. I ended the live stream prematurely. They wanted an extra day for on Wednesday. They wanted next Wednesday to be another day in the House. But you could hear in the background, no. The Liberals and the NDP didn't want that. And, of course, here you go. All right, you guys are obsessed with my pants. That one time that I showed that I wasn't wearing pants, here you go. I'm wearing pants today, folks. Peace and love. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a great weekend if I don't see you tomorrow. And, see you guys on Monday.